Ay, Hello. Okay, good morning, everyone. We are finally on the last day of our web conference, and I hope that you are still driven or motivated to finish the remaining sessions we have. Zoom fatigue is true to many, and we have information overload for the past 2 days. But I am telling you, we have two interesting topics left, and we have two equally dynamic speakers as well. So while waiting for our speaker to come in and the participants or other participants also to enter, may I read here greetings from our participants? Okay. We have Ma'am Hilda Sabuga. Ma'am, good morning. We also have Ma'am Naomi Tuvilla. Good morning, Ma'am Naomi. We also have still present from Maigo, Lanao del Norte. Good morning and happy Sunday sa lahat. Ma'am Janilu R. Sabuga. Okay. We have Sir Richard Perez from Cavite State University. Good morning, Sir Richard. Magandang buhay po sa lahat. Magandang morning po. Maraming salamat, dakilang ama, sa panibagong araw ng pagkatuto mula po sa Gimbal National High School. Pagpanamyaw or greetings from Maria Noben Torres Eculia. We have Ma'am Mona Alea L. Matolog. Salam and good morning everyone watching from Tawi-Tawi. So imagine from the southernmost province of the Philippines, we have the area of Tawi-Tawi. Still have participants came from Tawi-Tawi. We have Ma'am Maria Liomo B. Lagrosas from Colegio de Iligan. Good morning from Ma'am Lagrosas. Good morning po, Ma'am. We also have Ma'am Charlene M. Galindo. Good morning. Elizabeth Castro from Labrador, Pangasinan. SDO1, Pangasinan. Good morning po. We also have Sir Armando Isuan from Central Philippine University, based here in Haro, Iloilo. Good morning po. Also from Ayani Cosepe and Ma'am Emilia Ramos, who came all the way from Romblon State University, San Fernando campus. We also have Ma'am Anisita C. Palacios from Colegio de Iligan. Sir Alvin Fulgencio from Southern Baptist College of Milang, North Cotabato. Maayong aga, sir. We have a blessed Sunday, everyone, watching from Noragaray College in Norzagaray, Bulacan. And Sir Frederick Hernandez also. Good morning, sir. We have Ma'am Naomi Tuvilla from Dr. Salay Community College in Misamis Oriental. And we have also Sir Belegardo Paculanang. Dr. Paculanang is from Taguig City University. Sir, good morning. And Ma'am Juliet Hermoso. We also have from Agusan National High School, Senior High School in Butuan City. Good morning po ulit sa lahat ng mga participants natin dito. I will find time later on to read also some of the greetings of the participants that I failed to read. Okay? So again, with that, allow me again to remind you of the following rules to follow. 1, the opening of camera is recommended. 2, always mute your microphone. 3, use headphones or earphones. 4, find a seat or location that is comfortable and well lighted. 5, it is advised to wear business or smart casual attire. 6, finish the whole virtual conference and complete the evaluation form for you to get your certificate. 7, always direct your concern through personally message or PM on our page or our email address so we can provide answer to your concern. For today's session, we will have a discussion on a topic, usage and applications of the different statistical tools in educational research from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. and data analysis in qualitative and mixed method research with in vivo software from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. We are presently viewed on different social media platforms. We are presently live here in Zoom and also at the official YouTube channel of POMI and delayed telecast on Phi-Eye 21 Facebook page. Again, I am Mr. Jose Brian Casella. Welcome to the last day of the web conference sponsored by the Philippine Institute of 21st Century Educators Incorporated or Phi-Eye 21. This is in collaboration with 12 other professional organizations. For our morning session, PICE 21 is in cooperation with the International Multidisciplinary Organization for Research and Extension Incorporated, or IMOR Incorporated. With that, may I request everyone now to put yourselves in the presence of the Lord. Lord, we knock unto you to glorify and praise you for all the blessings you have bestowed on us. Thank you for gathering us today to share knowledge and time with one another. As we come to the last day of this web conference, may you extend your God-given wisdom to all of our speakers so that they would be able to effectively impart their God-given wisdom to all of us. May they be blessed as they continue to share their expertise to everyone who needs them. Continue to protect our nation and all of our brothers and sisters that we may be able to defeat this pandemic. Keep us safe, O Lord. Amen. Good morning again. Before we formally introduce to you our speaker, I would like everyone again listening to the different platforms we have to effectively and responsibly use the chat function, especially in raising your questions or insights. You can write your questions or insights while our speaker is having his discussion or having her discussion, but expect it to be answered during the question and answer portion. We will be having the open forum after the speaker's presentation. And to those who would like to personally ask questions, you may also press the raise hand button and we will be notifying you ahead if you're recognized. Thank you. With that, it is now time for me to introduce to you our speaker for the morning session. Our speaker for this morning has obtained a degree, Bachelor in Secondary Education, major in Mathematics at Bohol Island State University in Tagbilaran campus in 2008, and finished her Master of Science in Mathematics, also in the same university in 2011. She also earned her Ph.D. in Statistics at the University of the Philippines, Diliman in 2017. She has also been working in Bohol Island State University main campus for more than 14 years, where she served as lecturer of the graduate school program, as assistant professor, university statistician, and faculty regent. She has published and presented several research outputs where she was awarded as Best Paper Presenter. Presently, she's working on papers about switching meta-regression in high-dimensional data and metacognitive approach in teaching. Ladies and gentlemen, to discuss to us the topic, usage and implications of the different statistical tools in educational research, we have Dr. Ivy Corazon A. Mangaya-ay. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. I was not here when you introduced yourself, but it says here you are Jose Abrian Casella. Do I pronounce your name right?
Yep, ma'am. Yep, ma'am.
Thank you for introducing me this morning. Good morning to all participants.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning,
ma'am.
Morning, ma'am.
Okay, there are 99 participants here, even if it's good morning, even if it's a Sunday. So I can really feel the love for statistics. I'm very happy seeing 100 participants today, because I think, as I've observed, we have a scarcity of statistician all over the Philippines, and webinars like this are good platforms to disseminate statistics. Okay, it's because if there's a scarcity of statisticians in the Philippines, or even the whole world, I think every researcher should know the basics of statistics, and I believe this is the objective of this webinar. So when the organizer contacted me to have a talk, can you hear me?
Yep, ma'am. We can hear you, ma'am. We are following you, ma'am.
Okay. When the organizer contacted me and to do this speakership, he told me that I have to speak on statistics, its use on statistical tools, its usage and implication on educational research. So I thought of explaining statistics embedded in research. So hence my discussion this morning is the role of statistics in every step of doing research. Well, basically, when we do research, we are testing the hypothesis. So in the entire course of research, especially in quantitative research, statistics really is indispensable. So there is always statistics in every step of the research. And I have also observed Bohol Island State University, where I worked at, is not an exemption of this. Most of the students will just come to me for and ask for a help being a statistician when there is already a data. So I hope at the end of this webinar, we will be able to realize that when we need a statistician, we have to ask a help from her or him since from day one when we do our research project. Not that the statistician will come in and will make band-aid solutions for our research. So in the very first step of research, or in the very first phase of research, there has to be a statistician, or if walang statistician, like we the researchers or the statistician themselves, we should have consider data analysis or statistics part even on the planning stage. May I know from the chat box if how many of you are statisticians in their universities out of the 104? Or in the SUCs, there are really, as what I've said, there is a scarcity of statisticians, those that really graduate from a bachelor or a PhD or a master's. Even in BISU, I think I'm the only one with such degree. So that's why we are utilizing our math majors, even our engineers. So when I'm asking who are statisticians here, I mean, doing statistics in the university or maybe in the institution that they belong, how many? None from the audience.
Again, to our participants here, it would be ideal if you are to write it in the chat function if you are involved also, especially in dealing with statistics. As far as I know, Doc, most of the participants we have are teachers in the basic education, in the secondary level, and we also have students who are in their dissertations.
Okay, sige. I think this is okay. Here's from Orvin. He graduated from MSTM. He is now designated as statistician. So I think this webinar, this talk specifically will help you if you are an advisor at the same time statistician. This is a smart guide on how we are going to walk through every research project of our students. Let me present to you my PowerPoint. So as you can see, my presentation here focuses on the role of statistics in research. As recall, the entire research process goes from planning to designing to collecting data analyzing, interpreting, and generalizing. Now, let's go to the planning stage, or it is when the conceptualization of our research project takes place. When we do the planning of our research, there has to be a planning of the statistical approach also. There has to be a statistical approach in mind at the start of your research project. We have to begin with an end in mind. If this is something that we want to achieve at the end of our research, are the objectives in mind plausible and statistically attainable? Because I have also observed during proposal, the students, well, in the early stage, because we all walk through, we have our own shares of difficulty at the first stage of our research projects, or even our thesis and dissertations. But this is to guide you. Well, it's okay that since it is a research, we certainly have a hardships or even errors along the way, but to prevent from doing a back job in your research, like for example, you are already in the collection of data, and then you are about to interpret, only to find out it doesn't match with the objective. So from the start of the research project, we should begin with an end in mind. So if this is something that I want to achieve at the end of our research, are my objectives plausible and statistically attainable? What does it mean? I should have an idea or a snapshot. What data am I going to collect? What variables do I intend to measure? Are they measurable, or are they even available? Because if this is our objectives and the data are not available, then how can we attain such objectives? And even if the data are available, is there a way to measure it? For example, if I am going to correlate or get the link between work-life balance and happiness, then I have to think, is there a way to measure happiness? Then maybe I will ask myself, is happiness even measurable? So, and then later when perhaps if we are going to do literature review, then we can have somehow an idea that yes, happiness, though it's abstract, can be measured through manifest variables. And I am able to come up with a certain questionnaire that measures happiness. But that certain questionnaire measures happiness of people from Europe. So it may not be a manifest variable, or it may not be an item that asks happiness for a culture that came from Asia. So even if we have, I believe that the literature search, siguro the planning will start with topic of interest, but be able to conceptualize the problem. You have started your literature search already, so that you will have an idea that the objective in mind, the research that you are going to undertake is researchable. Kumbaga, there is a scientific support to the objective in mind. And in the first phase of your research, you have certain level of confidence that it can be measured, and that the data are available, and that the research that you are going to take is researchable and plausible. And then at the early start of your research, you should be able to know how many variables do we wish to measure, or do we intend to have just one, more than one, or too many. Because if you have somehow a picture of how many variables do you wish to measure in attaining the objective of your study, there is already an equivalent or somehow a picture of what statistical method you are going to apply. So that's it. So when I am going to sit as panel, being an expert on statistics, in every panel defense, in the title per se or in the objective, if the objectives are clear, my mind will also be clear on these are the possible things that he is going to do. Why do I say possible things? Because if the objective tells us about links, then probably in the later part of his discussion or in his presentation, maybe he is going to measure about correlation, Spearman, because even on the title, on the objective, a statistician would know what are the possible tests or statistical methods or statistical model that might be applied. I said might be applied because a specific statistical analysis is definitive only when the data are available, because we still have to check the behavior of the data. So that's why if you're really a statistician and then you meet students from the hallway, and then some students are very much eager to converse me about what to do with their research, and they will just say, "Mom, what statistical analysis should be applied when we are going to correlate, or when we are going to associate gender with for instance, gender with academic performance?" We cannot expect a statistician to answer directly, because maybe his reply, or definitely his or her reply, would be you try on test of association, but never a definitive test, because he or she still has to examine the behavior of the data, like testing the assumptions. But definitely, since from the conceptualization, there is already a spirit of statistics in it. Or else, if wala po tayong idea, or we don't consider statistics in the planning stage of our research, then probably we might end with I hope this is not the case, but I have observed many cases like this, that in the end, si objectives na lang yung mag-adjust. Kasi ito na lang yung data na available. With the data that you collected, in the end, you realize that the objectives cannot be attained using such data. Tapos, kasi gugustuhin natin gumraduate yung ating mga students, si objective na lang ang mag-adjust. So I hope this will not be the case. I am really hoping that with our knowledge on statistics, these unfortunate scenarios will be lessened, if not eradicated in our research projects. And well, in the planning stage, along with the objectives of the study, there has to be a statistical counterpart. Or if for example, generally we are aiming to predict a student achievement. So along with the along with the research objective, there is also a statistics on it. So that's why, as you have observed, when we are going to write our main objective, there are words that are scientific in nature, and it becomes technical in the research, in the research field. Like, when I think you've observed that when we write our main objective, it's more of the main objective of the study is to classify, to predict, to test whether variable 1 is significantly related with variable 2, or if this treatment improves the performance of of a certain subject of study in the aspect of the outcome variable. And in the planning stage, it is very essential, if we have already identified whether we have our dependent and independent variables. Like, for instance, if we want to predict, we could imagine that there is an independent variable and there is a dependent variable. Well, having specified our objective, we already know that there could be a dependent and independent variables. Now, question, are there studies with no dependent variables? Yes. Like for example, we are just aiming at or looking at the factors underlying a certain characteristics. Like for example, factors underlying the spirit of volunteerism. So we could picture out that a possible statistics could be factor analysis, and a factor analysis does not have a dependent variable. It checks on the interdependence of variables. So that's why when I have to mentor my students, I would know that particular student has not yet read on literature if I am going to ask him or her, what is your dependent variables? What is your independent variable? And that student cannot answer me directly, meaning he has not yet understood the objectives of the study, meaning wala pa siyang direction kasi hindi niya alam kung ano yung variable of study niya, meron ba siyang dependent, meron ba siyang independent variables. So I would not proceed to the next step, especially on collection of data, if this is not well understood. If the objective of the study is not well understood, and if the students will not be able to answer me, what are you going to do? If this is you are going to do, are the data available? How are you going to collect the data? What are your variables of interest? Do you have dependent variables? Do you have independent variables? And then are you sure these variables would measure this? So these are the questions in the planning stage that we will not be moving to the next step unless these are all settled. And in the designing, so you have this blueprint in mind, because I call the planning stage statistical engineering, because you have a blueprint of what you are going to do. And in the designing stage, it is more of a detailed information of the big plan that you have. So if this is an experiment, if for instance, I am going to compare the performance of a certain of three types of fertilizers for for the growth of a certain, for example, PETSHI, then in the designing stage, if my objective is to compare, the designing stage will have a minute details on what to do with our objective. Like, for example, this is where complete randomized design will come in. This is where RCBD will come in. So, kumbaga, I call this stage statistical architecture, because what the engineer has planned in the planning, it will be well articulated in the designing stage. So with this objective in mind, would I be doing descriptive survey? Would I be doing experimental designs? And if it's experimental design, what is the specific design that I am going to use? That's why it says here, it's a more precise blueprint of the statistics to use. This is knowing what type of research project to undertake. That's why if we are going to pursue on the statistics side, if we are going to pursue our research project descriptively, or we just wish to describe, then somehow at this stage, when I have this in the research course, when I have already the design in particular, like the CRD, if that's an experimental design, or RCBD, on the statistical counterpart, I already have a more clear picture of what possible statistics that I am going to use. For instance, if I just wish that my research will be describing, then I will be using summary statistics. It can be in a graph, or in a summary statistics, or maybe a discipline related classifications, or what is meant by discipline related classifications. Perhaps these are just frequencies, for examples, type of species in the forest. So we are going to count them and then categorize them based on the discipline related classification. So with the design in mind, like differences between sample groups, and if I have this continuous data, possibly continuous data, then I have already in mind, or we should have already in mind, that possibly we are going to use ANOVA, depending, well, if there are 3 groups, we'll discuss more of that later. If we wish to pursue on the differences between sample groups, if there are 2, then there are possibly we could use t-test depending on the behavior of the data, because if it follows a certain assumption, then parametric assumption, then we may have t-test perhaps, but if not, we can use non-parametric tests. So, and then, or maybe with the design that we are going to pursue, for instance, with the design that we are going to pursue, is it possible, or is it plausible to use correlation and regression analysis, or test of associations, classifications, or patterns? Like, for instance, in patterns, I have attended also a lecture of my professor, Sir Kiko, yesterday. He discussed on point patterns. If we are going to pursue on the links dependent on location, then we may have spatial analysis. Or if we are going to pursue or explore on the links and it's time dependent, then we have to go to time series analysis. Kumbaga, with the research design that we all have this drop-down list of possible statistics that we are going to use. But in designing and in looking at possible statistical tools that we are going to use, from the beginning, we have already considered the type of variables, the variables that we are going to explore, and make sure that these variables are measurable since from the start. Okay, and you can observe that from planning to designing, there is an elimination of possible statistical tools that we are going to use. Like for instance, from the planning stage, we are looking into the links, but the links that we are going to pursue, for instance, is not time dependent, meaning we are not going to pursue time series analysis. Now, if it's dependent on certain categories, then we may go into the path of categorical data analysis. And if it's location dependent, then we may pursue cluster analysis and something like that. So, kumbaga, from the start of the research, we have already the possible list of statistical tests that we are going to use. But when we are going to define and describe further, then we have this elimination of possible statistical tests until the objective in mind, with the data available, with the behavior of the data that we have collected, we have found out a statistical test that really matches the objective of the data, and as well as the characteristics of data that we have. And the next stage is collecting the data. Remember that it's garbage in, garbage out. Even how sophisticated or how elegant our statistical tool is, if the kind of data is garbage, what do we expect of the output? So what does this clearly mean? So for instance, if balikan ko yung example ng happiness. If for instance, we wish to correlate happiness, work-life balance and happiness, only to find out that the questionnaires that we use, or the survey questionnaire that we use, does not measure happiness. So that's what I mean. So remember the possible output if we are going to conclude that happiness is related, the work-life balance is related with happiness, only to find out our questionnaire does not really measure happiness. Meaning to say, before we are going to give out our survey questionnaire, we have checked the validity of our questionnaire. So it can be you can always check construct validation. We have exploratory factor analysis, we have confirmatory factor analysis, and if we are going to examine per item, then we can have also item response theory. There are many statistics that would check the validity of the questionnaire, but we also don't forget the content validity, in which we are going to invite experts, and if we don't have that resources to hire to check the content. For instance, we are in our thesis and dissertation stage, na we have limited resources. One way to check the content is what I advise, or what I require from my students, is that they have the 3 column. For instance, they have these questionnaire, and that per item in the questionnaire, there has to be a literature support. Like from in the first column, they have to indicate the source where they got that certain item, and then the direct quotation, or the excerpt from that source. Like for instance, I have a consultancy with DOST, one of the projects, and then they are measuring the acceptance, as well as they are monitoring the success of a certain project, and they need the social aspect for it. And then what we did is, because I'm not an expert, I'm not a content expert on their project, I required them, and they asked my help for validating the questionnaire. So before we subjected the questionnaire for construct validation, like the exploratory factor analysis and the confirmatory factor analysis, I have to be sure that content-wise, it really measures what it intends to measure. That's why I required them that there should be a source, and then an excerpt, and then how the item was asked in the questionnaire. And then that's it. So that the teachers would not feel, saan naman kinuha ang mga item na to? Are we sure that this is even measuring, like for instance, is this measuring volunteerism? Is this measuring happiness? Is this measuring level of acceptance, or what? Is this questionnaire measuring test questionnaire measuring mathematical ability, or what? So we have to do content validation, construct validation, to be sure that our instrument or the collected data is really a good data, so that when we are going to process it, the statistical tools that we are going to apply would not be useless. Because even again, if even how sophisticated or elegant our data analysis is, if our data is garbage, then the output of the data will also be garbage. And in the collection of data now we are in the point wherein we are sure that our data is of good quality. The next step is recording the data, and it should be scientific recording layout. It's because I have observed this na si student, kaya niyang mag-SPSS, analyze, compare means, analysis of variance. But transferring the data from a survey questionnaire to the SPSS, or managing the data from the questionnaire to the SPSS, that's where students have difficulty. It's because, for example, when we do t-test for independent samples, for instance, there should be one column, because in SPSS, right, one column, one variable. So there should be one variable, one column for, say, the two groups, for instance. So there is a coding for group 1 and group 2. That is how we are going to manage the data should we intend t-test for independent samples. And there is one column for the outcome variable, say academic performance. But sometimes the students have the tendency, because they are in a hurry to finish their thesis, their dissertation, what they are going to do is they are going to lay out their data with, for instance, this is the academic performance of student 1, and then the next column would be academic students from group 1, and then another column for students for the academic performance of the students from group 2. So pagdating sa SPSS, analyze, and then there is an outcome variable, then grouping variable, right? So wala na, hindi na siya makapag-proceed kasi wala siyang grouping variable. So ibig sabihin, from the planning stage, and then should we intend to do comparison of independent groups, then we should also have in mind how to lay out our data so that it would be easier for us to run an analysis on independent t-test or comparison of means from independent groups. It's a different layout when we are going to use, for example, test of difference from repeated measures or from same samples. For instance, that is the counterpart of t-test for independent sample is t-test for dependent samples. So now you will not have a column for the grouping, but you will be having a the outcome variable of group 1 and then the outcome variable of group 2, because when you are going to analyze it, whether it's SPSS or it's our software, you are going to you will be asked of the two pairings and not of the grouping. So this is what I meant. So we advisors and statisticians who give advice to our students, we will be also advising them how to lay out so that we will be it would be easier for us to run the analysis later on, because the data management will really take time, di ba? And it's seldom that because webinars like this, for example, I'm only given 2 hours to discuss, but so parang nasa-sacrifice yung data management. But as what I've observed, like even the faculty researchers or even the students, madaling matutunan ang paano mag-analyze, paano mag-manipulate doon sa mga software like SPSS, lalo na kung point and click. But doon sila mas stuck how to manage the data in such a way that mas madali siyang i-carry out in the next step of our research. So very important. That's why if we already have a software in mind, before we are going to lay out our data, we should also check on the data structure needed for a certain analysis when we are going to use a certain software. Okay? And then please, I hope, well, I am also into students knowing the mathematical procedure of statistics. But I guess it will be taught in a statistics subject. But when we are doing research, we should also support our students from using software, because I also have I have paneled one of the research defense in which that particular university requires the student to do it manually. Even in my PhD statistics in UP, I was not asked to run the analysis manually, because may ibang mga analysis like the factor analysis na yung mathematical procedure niya, kailangan niya ng multiply na, for example, matrix na 30 by 30. It would be very hard for the students to multiply a 30 by 30, for instance, matrix na should be done manually. Please, we will also encourage our students to use our software, because I think the soul of statistics is be able to spot on the appropriate statistical test to be used, and at the same time be able to interpret the results. The arithmetic part or the manual computation, yes, it should be taught, but maybe in the statistics subjects, not a requirement for a research, because the requirement to let them compute manually hinders them to use more advanced statistics. So that's it. In my PhD course, we learned the philosophy, the science, the math behind, but it's on variables in letters, but not on a big data set. So I hope this is clear. And in analyzing the data, ito, because I am given only 2 hours this morning, I wish I could teach you how to run analysis in our software or maybe in SPSS, but I only have 2 hours. Usually, if I have speakership like teaching you from managing data to um, to to running a validity test, to running the statistical test that we intend to use, it will take a lot. It will take like 2 days or 3 days to do that. But here's the smart, smart, a must-have ba kung baga when we are going to use a statistical tool. Always check for statistical assumptions. Para saan yung assumptions? Ito, parati ko itong ginagawang example for my students. So ganito ko i-lecture yung mga students about assumptions. For example, you have a boyfriend, for instance. So I'm telling this to the students. For example, you have a boyfriend and you visited him in their house, and then even if how much you call him, how many times you call him, and then, hey, I'm here, but he just stares at you, and then there is a beautiful girl beside her, and then your assumption was your boyfriend did not open the door because he has someone else beside him. And then even if how many times you press the doorbell, it seems nothing happened, and then you broke up with him because of those premises, because of those assumptions, only to find out he was not able to hindi niya alam na nandun ka pala sa labas because he did not hear the doorbell rang, because only to find out yung doorbell ay sira pala. So you come up with a wrong solutions because you have a different assumptions. So ganun din yung statistics. We should be afraid of coming up into a wrong conclusion, because you have not checked the assumptions. And normally, parametric tests are more powerful than non-parametric tests only when the statistical assumptions are met. And these are the the common assumptions of parametric tests. However, these are not the only assumptions of all parametric tests, but like for example, the multiple linear regression, there has to be an assumptions of no outlier, the assumption on homoscedasticity, no serial correlation, no autocorrelation, something like that. But these are the 4 common statistical assumptions. One is normally distributed data. Now, going back to the course of research now, from planning, you have that general objective in mind, and be sure there is a plausible statistical analysis for that. And then there is the designing stage, in which you are going to carefully design and to spot on a minute details of what are you going to do. And here at this point in time, we have funneled we have eliminated and some statistical tests that we are sure is not really applicable, or not really applicable of the objectives in mind. And then we have a few short list of statistical tests that we could possibly use. And then when we have our data na, we already collected the data, and then the statistical test that we are going to use seems to be clearer now, and I hope it should be clear at this stage because you have collected the data na, and then you have organized, you have managed the data in such a way that it would be easier for you to run the analysis. Now you have the data na. It is, for instance, you are using SPSS as your software. You have seen the data na, and then now it's the time to check the behavior of the data. Like, we are going to check if our data is normally distributed. Now, the core element of the assumptions of normality asserts that the distribution of a sample means across independent sample is normal. That is, if you take sample, calculate its mean, and write this down, then take another independent sample and get its mean and write it down, and do this infinite number of times, the distribution is normal. So when we say normally distributed, that is that the data, when you get a sample and get its mean, for instance, you get the temperature of COVID patients. Say, for example, you have sample one of COVID patients and get the temperature, get its mean, and then another set of COVID patients, get its temperature and then get its mean, and then you do it infinite times, and all the means that you have recorded, when you check its distribution, if it's normal, then it's normally distributed data. Central limit states that in big sample, the sampling distributions tend to be normal anyway, regardless of the shape of the population distribution. Regardless of the shape of the population distribution. Just to give you a snapshot of what to check normality on this common statistical test, we have independent t-test. What to check for normality? You have to check the normality of the dependent variable by group. Say, we are going to compare the performance of running performance, for instance, of male and female. So there has to be a statistic, a check for normality for male and then for female. When we are going to use paired t-test, we will get the difference of, for example, get the difference from difference of pre-weights and post-weights after a certain intervention, health intervention is introduced. Then you are going to subtract to each of the samples. Then the differences, you have to check whether it's normal or not. If it's one-way ANOVA, you have to check whether the distribution is normal by group or its residuals. And Pearson correlation coefficient, it has to be bivariate normal. For every arbitrary value of, say, the independent variable, the independent variable has to be normal, and vice versa. Ganon yung bivariate normal. Baka kasi I have also observed na the assumptions for parametric tests like Pearson correlation, it has to be normally distributed. Baka naman isang parang univariate normal ang gawin nating check, parang isang check kumbaga. And then what if it's paired, what if it's a parang pre-test and post-test? What are we going to check for its normality? Baka naman yung ibang test ng normality sa pre-test, then ibang test sa post-test. It has to be the paired differences. And for simple and multiple linear regression, it is the residuals that we are going to check whether it's normal. That's why sa model, di ba, yung residual or yung error term should be, pag regression yan, OLS dapat normally distributed, tapos yung constant variance. Then the next statistical assumption is homogeneity of variance. Bakit need ng homogeneity of variance? When there is homogeneity of variance, meaning to say that two groups are comparable, di ba? Maybe you come across with, like, for instance, we have 5 data points and they have the same means, right? And you will be asked which students, or which group of students, or which group of subjects perform better, where in fact they have the same means. For instance, you have to look into the homogeneity. No, you are going to look at the variance, because when it's very scattered, or when the scatter is too narrow, meaning you are more definitive of your mean. When it's scattered, meaning you are not definitive of their performance, masyadong kalat. So if we are going to put that scenario into the checking of assumptions, when there is no homogeneity of variance, kung baga, kasi napaka-technical pag sinasabing homogeneity, why is there a need to have a homogeneous variance if we are going to test parametric test? It's because we want the two groups to become comparable in the first place. And then in designs which test several groups of participants, this assumption means that each of these samples come from population with the same variance. In correlational design, this assumption means that the variance of one variable should be stable at all levels of other variables. So the t-test for independent samples, ito yung what does it mean to have a homogeneous variance? That means that these samples come from population with the same variance. Now, if we are going to pursue Pearson correlation, for instance, this assumption means that the variance of one variable should be stable at all levels of other variables. Now, when this assumption is violated, the p-value is not trustworthy. Remember that the rejection of the null hypothesis is diba, when we do our decision making, when we are going to use p-value method, of course the decision whether to reject the null hypothesis or to do not reject the null hypothesis lies on the p-value. So if the p-value now is not trustworthy, meaning we may come up with a wrong conclusion. May I know if there are questions up to this discussion, or I am going to continue.
We will have the question and answer portion, ma'am, after your discussion, ma'am. And our participants are actually already encouraged to provide their own insights or questions writing in the chat or by providing it in the chat function. But as to answering questions, we will have it in the question and answer portion, Doc.
Okay, sige. Let me continue, okay? I'm sorry, hindi siya naghang yung laptop ko. Please wait for a while.
Okay, Doc.
I'll just stop sharing and then share again. Wala, naghang siya.
Again, while Dr. Mangaya-ay is providing solution to her technical difficulty, may I inform again our participants to write especially insights about Dr. Mangaya-ay's discussion. Personally, I am enjoying the discussion of Doc Mangaya-ay because it's easier to absorb. And for sure, it will provide a strong foundation to those who are not yet exposed to the concept of statistics or to those who are not at ease venturing in this field? Are we okay, Doc?
Okay, let me continue. Bakit tinuro ko at this point na we have to check statistical assumptions? Lahat po ng naisipan nating possible statistics, it should have a parang proof that we run all the assumptions. After all, we may arrive at a wrong conclusion because we have not checked the assumptions. That's why, for instance, if my students would go into regression, like in their thesis, in their book, sa appendices, dapat meron siyang parang discussion or analysis ng lahat ng assumptions, parang proof kumbaga na chinek niya lahat yung statistical assumptions. And in the test of in the part of the thesis in which we are going to discuss statistical analysis, they have to justify why they use these certain statistical tool or statistical method or statistical model, and then they have to support their justification by the results of the assumptions that they checked. And there are common tests of, by the way, ang mga test for normality, merong Harkibera, Kolmogorov. So you can explore. I wish I could have written here, but sige, balikan ko. I think hindi ko siya nasama dito, but pwede po akong magpakita ng sample ng statistical test na chinek yung statistical assumptions. And if we still have time, like for instance, maybe we can have an example on regression. So I have here a Word file na meron siyang problem, and then chinek yung assumptions and how it should be reported. And then the common test of homogeneity of variance, we have Bartlett's test. If you are going to check it further, it's the uniformly most powerful test for homogeneity of variance. However, it is sensitive to non-normality. And we also have Levene's test. It is not sensitive to heavily tailed distributions like students T and exponential. We have Brown-Forsyth test. It's not sensitive to skewed like chi-square and extremely heavy tailed distribution like Cauchy. It's more robust than Levene's test. Anong ibig sabihin ng robust? Parang it still works even on non-normal distribution. Now, before we are going to go to the next statistical assumption or for parametric test, diba, we have discussed already that it has to be normally distributed. There has to be a homogeneous of variance, or there is an assumption of homogeneity of variance. The next one is it should be at least interval. So, pero balikan lang muna natin yung type of data. Kanina sa objectives, di ba? Dapat we already have a snapshot or a hint of what variable are we going to measure. So, it means if we have a type of variable question in mind, we already have a picture of the type of data that we are going to collect, because these are really related terms, data and variable. There are types of data. This is how I grasp data so that I would be able to spot on the correct statistical method. Like, what are the types of data? One is quantitative data. Next is categorical data. So para I picked definition that are easier to grasp, because we only have 2 hours. When we say quantitative data, it represents amounts. When we say it's categorical data, it represents groupings. When we say amounts, like for example, volume, area, when it's groupings, group A, group B, male versus female. So when there are categories, it's categorical data. When there is grouping, it's categorical data. When you look into amounts, that's quantitative data. By the way, and these are types of variables. I have mentioned already the variables since from the term variable since from the planning stage. When we say variable, remember that it comes from the word vary, because it varies from one entity to another. Like for instance, if I'm going to talk to my mentee, to my students, what are your variables? And then, my variables would be type of school, for instance, is private or public, or SUC, or state university or state college, for instance. And then when I look at the data, parang lahat naman sila ay public. Parang lahat naman sila ang private. So we cannot consider it as a variable, because it does not vary from one entity to another. So when we do statistics, remember that halos lahat ng statistics ay dependent siya sa variance. So kumbaga mamamatay ang statistics kung walang variance, kasi hindi siya nag-vary. For instance, correlation, di ba? We are trying, or regression, we are trying to explain the variation of the independent variable using by the variation of the independent variable niya. And then, sorry, minsan nabibisaya ko kayo kasi I'm from Bohol, Bisaya ako. So, minsan I will be trying to speak in English, minsan Tagalog, but sometimes nakakalimutan kong nagbibisaya din ako. So, going back to that, again, I think statistics will die without variance, because like the regression, we are trying to explain the variation of the dependent variable by the variation of the independent variable. Tapos yung feed in mong data hindi varied, hindi siya variable. So kumbaga, baka naman in the end we are concluding that this does not explain this, but in the first place, I think my guess hindi mag-run yung mga analysis kasi nga walang variance, di ba? Minsan may mga students, ma'am, bakit hindi siya nag-run? Bakit ganito? Sira ba yung SPSS? Hindi naman sira yung SPSS. Talagang wala naman talagang variance sa data mo. So check on that. And then from the type of data, can I have 1 minute break? I have to drink what, like siguro mga 1 minute lang. I
Okay,
have to
Doc.
drink
Yes,
water.
Doc. Yep,
Yeah.
Doc. Okay.
Parang nasusun.
So we are actually receiving lots of positive feedbacks from the talk of Dr. Ivy Corazon Mangaya-ay. We have here one from Maria Noben Torres Eculia. Doc Mangaya-ay explains very well. Thank you so much. It's comprehensive and substantial at the same time. According to Sir Orvin Lobitos, I found Doc Mangaya-ay's way of explaining subject matter comprehensive and very easy to grasp. I like it. Yeah, it's right to check the facts of assumptions before concluding things. Thank you for that. Very substantial reminder, ma'am. Okay. So again, we failed also to greet some of our participants here. We have Sir Cleo Jude Joaquin. Mayad nga adlaw kaninyong tanan from Capiz State University. We also have Sir Joseph Tandas. Good morning, everyone, from Ifugao State University, Potia Campus or Posha Campus. And Ma'am Hani Kalumag and Ma'am Mary Jane Murillo, Sir Irene Miguel Daguasi from Kalinga State University are all greeting us good morning as well. Okay, so for sure, every one of you here are enjoying the talk of Dr. Mangaya-ay. Again, conforming to that of the statements provided by two of our participants here. Personally, I find it easy also to grasp. And it's very compact the way you look at it. Although we know it that Doc Mangaya-ay is telling us a while ago that it will normally take them longer duration talking about concepts, dealing about her talk. But she was able to provide us a very comprehensive kind of discussion even in a short amount of time. Okay? I don't know if Doc Mangaya-ay is already okay. But I think it would be ideal for me also to read some of the greetings here. We have Sir Jericho Baybayan from Cotabato City, Notre Dame University. Good morning, Sir Jericho. We have Ma'am Annalisa Kanilang from Muntinlupa Science High School. And Muzakir Sopari, good morning po. Good morning from the Western Mindanao State University. And we also have Sir Japet Nabaira from Aklan State University. Doc, we are having positive feedbacks about your talk. I think it would be ideal for you now to continue with your discussion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I had my water break. So before continuing my discussion on type of quantitative variables, I remembered one time one of my mentees, kasi iba yung advisor, ako yung stat, kumbaga. Then they approached me when they were done having their proposal already. So kumbaga they are about to collect data. Their study is on parang adherence of, if I remembered it right, adherence ng mga boarding houses around the university to standards, di ba? May building code, may building standards. So parang, and then they are relating it to, I think, to parang a performance of the students sa mga projects, sa mga assignments. Kasi parang yung hypothesis nila, if hindi nag-adhere yung mga boarding houses to standard building standards, they have a difficulty to perform in their subjects. So they intend to generalize but only to find out wala palang listahan si munisipyo ng mga boarding houses. Wala. So ibig sabihin, malimit yung study nila sa purposive sampling. But remember that basic definition of inference, using a sample to be able to generalize. Ganyan yung quantitative research, di ba? For you to have a quantitative research, dapat meron kang inference. Parang hindi lang nag-describe, but your intention is to generalize. Now, paano sila mag-generalize ngayon na it's impossible for them to do probability sampling because they don't have the list. So, kumbaga, parang na-defeat na yung purpose ng objective ng study kasi hindi pala to generalize yung hindi nila ma-attain yung generalization. So that's how critical the knowledge of statistics is, because parang in the middle of the research you will pause, hindi pala kaya yung objectives, tapos ka nang mag-propose. So ang dami mo nang nagawa, in the end hindi pala plausible. Could you have done it sa planning stage pa lang? So hindi sana mamomroblema ng ganon. So if there is a resident statistician, the advisor and the statistician as well as the researcher should work hand in hand, even on the conceptualization stage, even on the planning stage. It's because if for instance, if this is our objectives, if ito yung gusto nating ma-attain, there are certain counterpart statistics for that. Okay, so that's it. Now, continuing, because napaka-critical ng assumptions, we are going to... Okay. Wala namang question, no? I heard something. Okay. There are two types of quantitative variables. Discrete, di ba? There are two types of data. Naghang na naman yung laptop. I'll stop sharing. Sorry. Bakit ganito? Sa connection ko ba? Then, sige, let me continue. There are two types of variable, quantitative variable and categorical variable. Variable that contains quantitative data are called quantitative variable. Ano yung quantitative data? Those are data that talks about amounts. Ano yung variable? It comes from the word vary because it is a measurement that varies from one entity to another. Then categorical variable, it contains categorical data. Para madaling mag-grasp, when you say categorical data, meron siyang groupings. And there are types of quantitative variables. We have discrete counts of individual items. So kung, di ba, kung discrete variable, kung discrete distribution function, naka-stepwise siya kasi hindi siya continuous. So because these are counts, ibig sabihin hindi siya continuous, walang number na would make sense in between, like counts like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the numbers in between 1 and 2 doesn't make sense in a discrete variable. Walang 1.2, 1.3. You know, it has to be 1, 2. So these are one-to-one correspondence of your entities or of your subjects. When we say continuous variable, measures of non-finite values, or it can be interval or ratio, like distance, volume, or age. So, and then there is a meaning in between counts or in between numbers. Like distance could be 1.2 kilometer, volume could be 3.3 cubic centimeter. Age could be 1.4, 3.5, something like that. Now, there are also types of categorical variables. Bakit I discuss this? Because papunta po tayo sa another assumption na it has to be interval. So, dapat yung type of data, hihimay-himayin. So, I think when we are going to review, mga iilan lang ba ang nag-check ng assumption? When kahit ako, pag nag-panel ako from those from Middle East, parang kukonti lang yung parang would pay attention to assumption, but it has to be paid attention, because after all, as what I've said, you might arrive at a wrong conclusion because you have different assumptions. Now, going back to types of categorical variables, we have binary variable. From the word binary, it's just two. So presence or absence, yes or no outcomes lang, like win or lose in a boxing, heads or tails. For nominal variable, groups with no rank or order between them, like species, colors, or type of school, or the college or a department in a university, for instance. For ordinal variables, though these are groups, but hierarchy is there, meaning merong ranking. For example, finishing place in a race, like first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. This is an ordinal data categories siya because walang meaning ang mga numbers in between first and second, but it is different from nominal variables. It's because nag-exist yung hierarchy, meaning mas nag-perform better si first than second, si second than third. So merong hierarchy. For example, could be small, medium, or large. There is certain categories, but also there is a hierarchy. We know that medium is larger than small, and large is larger than medium, but we don't know the precise difference. So kumbaga, I come across this one in the internet. Parang at one glance nakita mo. So there are types of data or types of variables, quantitative and qualitative. Ako lang, I prefer to use categorical and quantitative kasi pag qualitative, baka parang ma-mislead ito. Pag sinabing qualitative, what comes in my mind, kung ako lang, I'm not an expert of qualitative kasi, like for instance, yung mga FGD, yung mga in vivo. So instead of classifying in my mind the qualitative siya, ginawa ko siyang categorical and quantitative. Pero some literature would classify them as quanti and qualitative. Qualitative means categorical pa rin. And then sa quantitative, merong discrete, yun yung counts, and continuous yung may interval at ratio. So may meaning yung in between. Now, in the assumptions, the level of measurement, in the assumptions of parametric tests, the level of measurement should be at least interval. Bakit tinawag siyang levels of measurement? But bakit tinawag siyang scales of measurement? Is because one is higher than the other. Kumbaga may hierarchy, may level. So the first level of measurement is nominal level of measurement. Siya yung pinaka mababa because we just assign number to it. We just classify data using numbers that represents non-overlapping categories. But there is no order or ranking that is imposed on the data. For example, the classical example of this is the sex, male and female. When we are going to transfer the data from a survey questionnaire, check if it's male or female, if you're a male, and check if you're a female. So when we are going to transform it into something that is processable by SPSS, we have to assign number. So that number, even if, for example, we assign 0 for male and 1 for female, even if 1 is greater than 0, it doesn't mean that being female is higher than being a male. It's just simply a number that is coded for male and female. So kumbaga, walang hierarchy. Next is the ordinal level of measurement. There is already a hierarchy. So ganito isipin, pag may order at may hierarchy siya, possible na ordinal level siya. Pero ano yung plus sa hierarchy? Plus no precise difference. Diba? Si nominal level, no hierarchy. Si ordinal level, may hierarchy plus precise difference do not exist. Ano bang ibig sabihin? Yes, alam natin, as what I have discussed earlier, alam natin na si medium ay larger than small and si large is larger than medium, but we don't know how large it is. We don't know the precise difference. So, di ba, pag first, second, third, hindi natin alam yung raw scores. Alam lang natin na first, second, third shot, mas magaling si first sa second kaysa third, but we don't know the precise difference. That is an example of ordinal level of measurement. Then the next one is the interval level of measurement. So, merong hierarchy plus precise, meron siyang precise difference, but plus 0 does not mean nothing. Okay, example, the very classical example for that is the temperature. We know that 2 degrees Celsius is hotter than 1 degree Celsius. And we know the precise difference. It is different by 1 degree Celsius. And there is also meaning in between, pwedeng 72.4, 72. However, 0 does not mean nothing. Kahit sinasabing 0 degree Celsius or 0 degree Fahrenheit, it doesn't mean no temperature at all. In fact, yung 0 degree Celsius, yan yung freezing point. So that's it. Ang pinakababa is nominal, next is ordinal, next is interval. The highest level of measurement is a ratio. Pag sinasabing ratio, may order or hierarchy, there is a precise difference, plus 0 really means nothing. Example for that is the weight. Okay, 4 kilogram, 5 kilogram. we know that 5 kilogram is bigger than 4 kilogram by 1 kilogram. We know the precise difference, and there is hierarchy. And 0 really means nothing, because when we say 0 kilogram, meaning wala talagang nag-exist na something na may 0 kilogram. Pag 0 kilogram yan, meaning wala. Like example, me, I'm too petite. I just weigh 46 kilograms. So even if how small I am, I'm not also a 0 kilogram. Pag nag-0 ako, so wala siya. I do not exist. So again, just to review, the assumptions ay dapat normally distributed, homogeneity of variance. Next is at least interval. So ibig sabihin, forget about, because Pearson correlation or t-test, yung outcome variable natin ay dapat at least interval. So ibig sabihin, kapag ang outcome variable ay ordinal na siya, ibig sabihin we lose the chance of using parametric test. So this is what I mean. So if age would be, for instance, our dependent variable, ibig sabihin, we have to ask for actual age rather than an age group from the start. Should we wish to have a more powerful test like the Pearson correlation or the t-test, kapag we intend from the very beginning na sana magparametric test ako on difference, and then for instance, sa ating survey questionnaire, we will not categorize them, or else we lose the chance of using parametric test. And aside from that, there has to be an informed consent, right? Because age or income are sensitive data, and we should adhere to data privacy. So with all these things in consideration, if we want to have an analysis na parametric in the end, dapat hindi natin i-categorize. For purpose of profiling, we are going to categorize it. But for the purpose of analysis, we may ask the actual estimate of the income rather than there is a grouping. Yan kapag ang aim natin is we do further parametric analysis. But if in the first place, if we just use those data for describing our data or just for profiling, then we may do the categorization. Okay? And kapag instead of asking the actual age and ginawa natin siyang age group, parang instead na meron sana tayong mataas na level of measurement as high as ratio, pero ginawa natin siyang categorization, meaning binabaan natin yung level of measurement, and there is a loss of information somewhere. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng loss of information? Kumbaga, pag sinabing for example, pag sinabing young adult or middle adulthood, or middle adult siya na belong, we just know that middle adult yung age niya, but we don't know how young or how older he is compared to the others who belong to the same age group. So yun. Data should be at least at the interval level. Next is check for statistical independence. Pag sinasabi, di ba, again, as a review, it has to be normally distributed, it has to have a homogeneous variance, and the assumptions of at least interval, and then assumptions of independence. In some cases, it means that data from participants are independent, which means that behavior of one participant does not influence the behavior of another. Kaya may malaking role yung randomization. Remember, meron ding role dito ang sampling, how you pick your respondents. That's why meron akong parang side kwento. My father-in-law ran for a counselor at our town, and then being a graduate of statistics, so I applied what I've learned in my PhD, and then I tried to predict the result. I tried to predict the results of the 2019 election. Then out of the 12,000 registered voters, I got the list from COMELEC, and then I had only 83 respondents for that. So, but 83 respondents, though it's kung ano lang ba ang 83 out of the 12,000, it's too small. But the manner by which these participants are chosen is that it is chosen scientifically, meaning I assured independence, I assured randomness of my subjects so that I can generalize. Fast forward during election, because in my survey, I knew that my father would not win statistically kasi very less likely siya using 83 respondents. And then, election time, yung parang day of election to 29, it was May 2019. And then, I don't know what to pray. Because if I will pray that he will win, it will become less of me as a statistician. Alam naman natin na passion talaga natin yung ating degrees, right? And then if I will pray that he will not win, parang it's odd naman to pray for your father not to win. I mean, all the family will be happy, right? But tumama talaga yung prediction ko or yung survey ko. It's because I ensured the randomness of my participants, of my respondents. That's how powerful checking assumptions is. Results in generalizing results of statistics, results are only appropriate when the sampling technique is also appropriate, or the manner by which you get your samples, you include samples, is scientific. So that's why you should also invest when you want to explore survey research. You should capitalize on sampling. Now, going back, in repeated measure designs in which participants are measured in more than one experimental condition, ito yung pre-test, post-test, or time series designs, we expect scores. Hindi naman natin pwedeng sabihin na yung pre-test ay walang kinalaman sa post-test because they were collected from the same samples. But ano yung spirit of independence, or ano yung i-check ng assumptions of independence? It should be that the behavior between different participants, so observation-wise or participant-wise, dapat independent siya. Hindi yung observation sa pre at post, but as parang row-wise kumbaga. And then subjects in one group cannot be in another group. So for example, if you are going to test the difference of those who are given a treatment, like for example, those who are exposed in a metacognitive approach in teaching, para walang bias, para at the end of the day, whether there is an improvement or not, you have the license to attribute it to the teaching method that you have introduced. One student should not be exposed to the metacognitive approach and at the same time to another approach, because there's a sense of bias. Kumbaga, naging dependent na yung performance niya sa next method na inintroduce. It's because she has learned already doon sa first method that was introduced. No subject in a particular group influences subjects in another groups. Kumbaga, independent talaga yung ating mga subjects, and in fact, independent yung ating mga data points. Okay, so before running into what analysis or statistical method that we are going to use, you have to check the assumptions. Yung inintroduce ko po ay basic assumptions lang or common assumptions of parametric test. But kung nasa field na po kayo, kasi very impossible for me to discuss many statistics in 2 hours, statistical methods in 2 hours. But ganito po yung gagawin. You have to check all the assumptions of a particular test. Parating ganyan. So, and then before choosing a specific test. Kasi parang sa planning, sa designing, sa collecting data, alam lang natin na test of difference siya. Test of correlation ang i-apply natin kasi if it's a test of correlation, if we are after of linking variables to variable or variables to variables. And then from planning to collecting data, alam lang natin na possible test of correlation, test of difference, and so on and so forth. But when we see the data, the behavior of the data, when we have checked the assumptions, we are now more definitive whether it's a parametric test or non-parametric test. So kapag hindi na niya na-suffice yung ating assumption, so instead of using independent t-test, we may use Mann-Whitney U-test, the non-parametric counterpart of the independent t-test. But just to help, this one is just a guide. However, again, you have to check the assumptions, the behavior of the data, if it's legitimate to use these tests. But just parang cheat sheet lang siya, no? Kung baga cheat sheet, meron lang tayong guide, but parang just to help us in deciding, but crucial pa rin yung role ng researcher as to deciding what statistical test to use. Now, if it's a paired t-test, yung predictor variable natin is categorical, and only one predictor, and the groups may come from the same population, and the outcome variable is continuous. Diba? I've discussed already ano yung continuous. It's either interval or scale. Interval or ratio. Example for this is we are going to test counseling program that will help subjects lose their weight. So kumbaga, okay, ano yung ating outcome variable natin kapag ganito yung example? May I see? Okay. Meron bang sumagot? Wait, it's already, sige, wag na siguro yung Q&A na ganyan kasi 11:22 na. I'm still hoping that there are questions from you, but yung weight ang ating outcome variable. Kumbaga, pag mag-picture out tayo ng research na ganito, nag-measure siya ng weight before and after. So that's why it's the same population. So nag-paired t-test siya or dependent t-test. Kapag one categorical predictor variable, tapos yung outcome variable natin ay continuous, and the groups come from different population, then we may use independent t-test. Like, see whether mean values of the tax-exempt properties are different for 2 cities. So the cities here, the 2 cities are the grouping, and that is our predictor variable that serves as our predictor variable, and our continuous is the values of tax, and our outcome variable is the values of tax exempt, and that is a continuous variable. So why it is independent? Because it does not come from the same population. It's categorical. Cities are categorical data, categorical variable, and there is independence, possible independence, because you cannot be a resident of one city and at the same time to the other city. So you may have two houses, but dapat mutually nagpartition yung dalawang cities, hindi pwedeng nandun ka or else may sa isang city tapos meron ka rin sa isang city or else there will be a double count. Ay nako, my internet connection. Wait lang ha, kasi naghang na naman siya. So next is ANOVA, categorical. May magsasabing mga books na one or more yes, it should be one or more predictors kasi one group, parang yung predictor variable natin ay treatment, but there must be three groups of three groupings like treatment 1, treatment 2, treatment 3, or for example, yung predictor variable natin ay type of fertilizer. So there are three types of fertilizer, and then we are going to check the growth of petri, for instance, or in this example, effect of three enzymes. Kung baga, ang ating predictor variable, one categorical, that is type of enzymes, A, B, or C. Yung outcome variable natin ay the volume of milk, that's continuous, and that is outcome variable. Okay? For multivariate analysis of variance, isang yung predictor variable natin ay categorical. One or more predictors, then our outcome variable is continuous, and two or more outcomes. For instance, si test scores and satisfaction scores natin ay ang ating outcome variable. Kung baga, there are two outcome variables. We are going to check whether it differ across three teaching methods. So here, there is only one predictor, and that is teaching method. For instance, we have teaching method 1, teaching method 2, and teaching method 3. Kung ordinary ANOVA yan, posible na there is no difference in the test scores across three teaching methods. And also, there is no difference in the satisfaction scores across three teaching methods. Pero, if magmanova po kayo, posibleng yung result ay posibleng may difference of in the relationship of the test scores and satisfaction scores across teaching methods. Kung baga, the satisfaction scores increases as the test score increases in teaching method 2, but not in teaching method 3 and 1. So, posibleng ganyan ang mga example. So, posibleng hindi makuha ni ANOVA, pero makuha ni MANOVA. So, I'm just giving you a parang picture kung anong ginagawa ni MANOVA. But with the 2-hour time, gustuhin ko man sanang i-perform to lahat, pero hindi kaya ng 2 hours. We also have analysis of covariance. So, one categorical and one or more continuous variable not part of the experiment. And then for the outcome variable, there is one continuous. For example, we are going to test a new drug under 3 treatments and 1 control. So we have treatments as our categorical. So may 4 na treatments, 3 treatments and 1 control. So that is categorical in the predictor variable here. And then, and one works for instance, works for a depression cure, for instance. And then, yung continuous variable natin, hindi lang makita dito, but when I give you the full PowerPoint, I think makita yung view. I have to fix the size of this one. For instance, you are also going to consider the weight of the, for instance, a number of hours sleep, and then the weight of the patients, for instance. So you are going to check the efficacy of this treatment, but you also need to consider another continuous variable. Pero sa ANCOVA, dapat yung continuous na yan ay independent sa ating categorical predictor variable. Parang sinasabi, parang chine-check lang ni ANCOVA na ito ay may effect sa outcome variable na kino-consider yung other variables na may not be related sa ating main predictor variable. And then the Pearsons are continuous, for example, determine whether study time and test performance are related. So study time, that's number of hours, pwedeng 12.4. Test performance could either be a scores, pwede siyang maging ratio scale. So pasok siya. And for prediction test, we have simple linear regression, one continuous predictor variable and one outcome variable. For example, we check whether the level of rainfall determines amount of soil erosion. So yung level of rainfall, it's an interval, it's a ratio data. Yung soil erosion din, it's a ratio data. So posible yung simple linear regression. But again, meron pang, aside sa apat na assumptions, meron pang, there are 6 assumptions for a linear regression. There has to be a linear relationship. There has to be no autocorrelation, no serial correlation. So there no outlier. So that's it. If you wish to have an example for this, I can send you privately, or kung sino man ang gumagamit ng R software, I can give you R script for this. And for instance, paano kung ang ating outcome variable ay binary na? Meaning, ano yung binary? Presence or absence, yes or no. Paano kung ang outcome variable natin ay binary, tapos yung independent variable natin ay continuous, and there are 2 or more predictors? So you may use logistic regression. Example for that is likelihood that a tumor is cancerous or benign. So yung ating binary is cancerous or benign. Tapos yung ating continuous data, posibleng data file siya ng mga previous patients, like siguro I'm not so much familiar with how the cancer and the cancer is being assessed, whether it's tumor or benign. But for instance, one of the predictor variable is the size of the tumor, the location of the tumor. So you may use logistic regression. And for non-parametric tests, di ba ang Pearsons R ay non-parametric test siya, the test correlation. By the way, as a review, ano bang kaibahan ng regression at Pearson? Si regression, more of the cause and effect, more of a prediction. However, I do believe that the cause and effect can only be measured by a true experiment. Kung baga, nag-experiment ka talaga. However, I also believe statistically merong tinatawag na inferred causality. Yun yung papasok yung regression din. Because we want to predict the outcome variable using the independent, the predictor variables or independent variables, or these terms can be interchangeably used. And sa correlation kasi, we just look into the relationship between this variable and this variable without necessarily claiming its cause and effect. It's the regression. By the way, wala pong non-parametric counterpart ang ating regression, but walang parang test na ito yung non-parametric counterpart nito, but there is non-parametric way of estimating it. You may look into like bootstrap regression, something like that. For paired t-test, merong ang kaniyang non-parametric counterpart, you may look into Wilcoxon sign rank test. And for independent t-test, you may look into Mann-Whitney test. And for ANOVA, you may look into Kruskal-Wallis test. Now, if na-test na natin lahat, meron na tayong output sa SPSS, kung SPSS man ang gagamitin, or R, or Stata, or SAS. Tapos may data ka na, may parang output of data ka na, please, wag nating i-interpret parang individually yung mga numbers, because for example, aanhin ko ngayon kung may 50% male and 50% female, what does it, kunwari you are into regression, bakit ganyan yung presentation? So dapat para makita mo yung association, you could have crosstabs perhaps, kasi parang para makita mo na yung trend na yung student achievement ng bata nag-differ siya across age grouping or the educational attainment of the mother. Nag-iiba pala. So makikita mo na yung pattern trend rather than simply giving to me how many of the respondents have these mothers with this educational attainment. Always relate it already with the variables under study, okay? And when we are going to interpret, do not interpret it individually. Lumabas ka ngayon sa integrity ng statistics, para nag-compute ka na lang, lumabas ka dyan, tingnan mo kung may pattern, trend, expected and unexpected results, similar and varying outcomes, and monotonous results. So parang even at our university, even in my surroundings, parang this campaign has to be wide, because parang ang labo naman na parang pagdidibatihan pa sa panel na dapat ba yung interpretation, minimum at maximum, dapat nandun? Hindi, walang golden rule for that. Kumbaga, we will let the data speak for itself rather than parang naka-frame na tayo na kapag nag-interpret, dapat i-interpret yung minimum and maximum. Hindi always ganyan. So, may isa ngang faculty na nag-text na sa akin na nag-chat na, ma'am, kapag nag-interpret ka ba, minimum and maximum lang? Kung hindi, depende kung anong storyline ang gusto ko. How would I present my data? Hindi naman sa lahat ng panahon na minimum at maximum lang ang i-present. Sabi niya, what can I do, ma'am? Under kasi siya sa akin ng stat. This is how I taught to them, but nung umuwi siya sa kanilang university or talagang inimpose ng panel na dapat pag nag-discuss minimum at maximum or even sa kanilang school. Well, this is the purpose of webinars like this, but sometimes parang draining na. We will fight over the panel just to assert that we are right or wrong. So this is a proper venue, but sometimes I have this in mind, but if all means and if by all means hindi ko kayang i-convince ang aking katunggali, whether it's a debate or in a panel, hindi ko siya ma-debate, hindi ko siya mapaniwala na dapat ganyan, parang I have this naughty thinking on my I'll just let you die with stupidity or something like that. It's bad, but my point here is hindi naman sana tayo umabot sa fighting during panel defense just because of this. Parang in every researcher, in every panel member, this has to be what it is, rather than settling down or rather than parang focusing na lang sa minimum at maximum. That's just an example. Describe what happened, that's descriptive or infer, and what could happen, that's prediction. And being a young researcher who has a hard time doing research, ako din, ginawa ko din to, and then I come across a speaker, his name is Castor Jocaris. I met him in Iloilo. I think he was from CHED and now he's from DOST. I like it when he introduced shellfish technique. Kung baga, sa Bisaya, it's manginhas in technical writing of reports. For example, like instead of to explore the effects of both pre-writing instruction factors, you may write your own variable, like to explore the effects of student variables, teacher variables, and school variables in student achievement. We run regression analysis. So something like that. Hindi naman tayo ma-plagiarize because we copy the word to explore. So we will be charged of plagiarism if i-copy natin yung mga noun clauses, but for verbs, but for like to explore, hindi naman siguro tayo ma-charge of plagiarism. So my point is, kung hindi pa natin kayang magsulat, then maybe pwedeng sapian tayo ng espiritu ng magagaling na writers, and then until we get our momentum. So that's it. And then for generalizing, balikan ko po ang meaning ng inference, no? The basic definition of inference, infer to generalize, is using a sample to be able to generalize the entire population. My question is, kapag we are going to use the entire population, mag-t-test pa ba tayo? Mag-ANOVA pa ba? Mag-test of inference pa ba? Kasi I've seen this many times na nag-utilize tayo ng population pero nag-infer. Hindi na. So if we are using the entire population, we just have to describe but not infer. So wala na yung test of inference, mga descriptive statistics na lang. So if our aim is to generalize, then if it's a survey, even if it's an experimental design, we use sample to be able to generalize the entire population. But in choosing our sample, in selecting our sample, it has to be scientific, or else there is a source of bias already from the collection of our data, and we lose the chance and we lose the right of generalizing it. And when we are about to write our conclusion, that's our generalization. Ako, I prefer to have a break before writing it, kasi 'di ba napaka-engross natin sa what design, ano bang plano sa ating, anong gagawin natin, ano ba yung stat, paano i-structure ng data, paano i-manage yung data, tapos hanggang sa meron na tayong possible, chinek natin yung behavior ng data, hindi siya parametric, so nag-resort tayo ng another non-parametric analysis. So nag-exert ulit tayo para mag-aral, study, but in the end, we forgot what is the message of our research project. So ako, I tend to have a break before I write. Tapos before I write, dapat parang tagbi ko na lahat. That's why I write here, we have to weave all the findings and results and get out from the nitty-gritty of statistics and be able to generalize something and come up with a take-home message from our research. So I think that captures the entire journey of research considering statistics. I hope you have learned something from me this morning for 2 hours. Yung 2 hours natin ay sobrang konti lang na oras, so that's why I am imparting to you my SMART techniques. And then I have to end this na yes, we should work hard in research, but don't forget to work smartly. Thus, we should start with an end in mind. So dapat smart tayo sa pagpili, sa pag-manage ng data para hindi tayo mag-backjump. Okay? I hope you have learned something from me.
Okay, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Ivy Corazon Mangaya-ay of Bohol Island State University. Our session is supposed to end at 11:30 in the morning today. But for sure, napasarap po yung pakikinig natin sa discussion ni Doc Mangaya-ay. I hope it's okay with us also here na to have at least 10 minutes to complete everything, to have the open forum, especially that we have a great number of questions appearing in the chat function, and we will prioritize obviously those who would like to personally raise their hands, would like to be seen, be heard, for their questions to be answered. Okay, so again, to those who would like to provide question, and still wanted to remain anonymous, we still have the code in slido.com. And again, the code is 448420. But if you notice, Doc, we already have questions appearing here in slido.com. And we'll see. Okay, again, for sure, Doc Mangaya-ay will be providing us her own email address or contact number later on, especially to those who would like to have their questions be answered. The fact that we don't have much time left already. Okay, so I guess, Doc, it would be ideal for us to start with a question from Ma'am Michelle Go. Ma'am, what do you think is the best or most appropriate test or statistical tools to use if your research problem speaks of relationship of two variables? Can we have again, Doc, the confirmation based? I guess you was able to inform it to us a while ago.
Okay, I think I've answered this one in the later slides. No, so if it's a test of relationship, we are just looking into the relationship of two variables, but not necessarily cause and effect. You may explore Pearson correlation if it's a parametric test, and Spearman or Kendall-Stowe or chi-square test if it's a non-parametric test. Check the behavior of the data.
Okay, thank you. What about a question here from Sir Ricky P. Alalid? If the instrument is adopted, is it necessary to undergo exploratory factor analysis?
Definitely, because that's construct validation. You may also try another test for that, but the exploratory factor analysis and then confirmatory factor analysis is a classical test for construct validation.
Okay, thank you, Doc. We have also another question from Sir Ricky P. Alalid. What about maximum iterations for convergence, mean in principal component extraction? You wanted to know about it? Doc, what do you think of that?
There is no golden rule for that. I think that's a very valid question, Ricky. That's a good topic for dissertation you might want to explore in the search of maximum iteration for convergence of principal component extraction. So I cannot deterministically answer that one. That's a good research problem. But sa number of iteration, nagta-trial and error po ako. But if you can read something, baka may development on the literature, then you may. And you may also want to explore it. Kung stat ka, then that's a good research problem.
Okay, thank you, Doc. I guess you was able to provide an answer also to the question of Ma'am Elaine Hubo, mainly because she was asking about the differences in the level of measurement that can be found in SPSS, such as the term scale, nominal, and ordinal. Sad thing, Doc, we were not able to provide, like, for example, depiction on how to show it, especially dealing with SPSS. What do you think of that, Doc?
Yes. How do we know the differences in the level of measurement? Because it's, diba, we have discussed the type of data, and then what are data that can be considered nominal and ordinal, and then sa scale, it's either interval or ratio. Diba? That's why yung sa SPSS scale lang siya kasi most of the parametric tests, I guess, are at least interval. So what is meant by scale in SPSS, that is intended for interval and ratio level of measurement.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Elaine. We have Sir Jericho Baybayan. Ma'am, is it true that we should check first the correlation before regression?
Ako, minsan I check correlation before regression. Sometimes then I immediately go to regression depending on the objective of the study. So, di ba, may mga specific objectives. And then, if, yes, para, para alam mo, if you're more of prediction, then, di ba, ang prediction is be able to predict Y in terms of X. Now, if your intention is to predict, pwedeng dumiretso ka na sa regression. But if your intention is to explain, then you may go to correlation first, because you are trying to explain the independent variable using the dependent variable using the independent variable, more of a diagnostic in nature rather than prediction. Then you may go to correlation first before regression. So that's my practice.
Thank you, Doc. I think we will cater these last two questions. We have one from Sir Ronnie Baliado. Doc, is there a rule of thumb in how to group data, for example, family income, in presenting that in chapter 4 of thesis?
Sir Ronnie, my practice for that, diba, it's always when you claim for something and it's backed up with literature, with a reliable literature, then you are confident enough that you are in the right track. Ako, if it's in the Philippines, I usually refer to the PSA na yung sa PSA na mga income bracketing when I present it sa research. Parang this is in accordance with how PSA group our income. So pag sinabing PSA, that's the wala namang ibang agency that would speak of this census, right? And the survey, it's the PSA. So that's why I utilize PSA for that.
Okay, so one thing, Doc, which is good among the participants you have here, some of them are actually providing answers also to the questions provided by our participants. We will have this last question, Doc. If you adopt a questionnaire but change indicator in Likert scale, do we need to subject them to reliability and validity again?
Yung reliability and validity kasi group dependent siya. So ano bang ibig sabihin ng group dependent? Yung results niya nagva-vary across different groups. Okay? So that's why it's good that you have to check the for example lang, if you have this questionnaire and this is established in Europe countries, you have to check the validity of that questionnaire and the reliability of the questionnaire dito sa Asian na setting, because it's group dependent, and yung mga tests for reliability and validity, it is group dependent. That's why we have to check it again. Anyway, aside from validity, we also have to check the applicability of these items in our settings, because it is also affected by culture, time element. It may be valid for 1990s, but not anymore valid in the pandemic times.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ivy Corazon, Mangaya-ay, for providing us a very interesting, enlightening, easy to absorb kind of discussion. In the early part of your discussion, Doc, there was like, in my case, I am guilty of the idea that when we talk, for example, about asking for assistance or guidance from a statistician, they're actually very important in the planning stage already. And most of us, we normally tap a statistician or seek advice from them already in the analysis part. Now, again, Doc, can we have concluding words from Dr. Ivy Mangaya-ay?
Okay. This is not concluding statement, but a call for every researchers to attend more seminars like this so we can enrich our research. You may explore on sampling techniques when you are going to do survey research, experimental design when you do experiments. Capitalize also on validity, reliability testing, because that is also good, and also explore more on regression analysis. explore on time series, explore on analysis that is location dependent. In short, wag naman sanang kumbaga we should have the mentality na yes, I still don't know these statistical tests, but I have this eagerness to learn and I can learn it. Okay?
Okay, and that ends our question and answer portion. We will try to reply to some of your queries raised after the end of the session. Let's proceed now to the reading of Certificate of Recognition to Dr. Ivy Corazon, A. Mangaya-ay. Phi-Psi 21, the Philippine Institute of 21st Century Educators Incorporated, Zaraga, Iloilo, Philippines, in cooperation with iMore Incorporated, or International Multidisciplinary Organization for Research and Extension Incorporated, awards this Certificate of Recognition to Dr. Ivy or to Ivy Corazon, A. Mangaya-ay, Ph.D., for imparting her invaluable time, resources, and expertise as resource speaker on the topic usage and implications of the different statistical tools in educational research during the conduct of National Webcon for the 21st Century Researchers and Educators with the theme Responding to the Challenges of Internationalization Amidst Difficult Times Through Research in the Academe, accorded this 22nd day of August 2021 via Zoom video conferencing, live stream on POMI YouTube channel and Phi-Psi 21 Facebook page. Signed, Ricky A. Cubinco, MAT, MLPT, Webcon Director. Signed, Rome B. Moralista, Ph.D., National President of iMore, and Emijan P. Indonila Palmani, MED, LPT, National President of Phi-Psi 21. Again, virtual round of applause to Dr. Ivy Corazon, Mangaya-ay. Again, Doc, thank you for making this session a successful one. We are looking forward to seeing you again, Doc, hopefully face-to-face on a bigger gathering of Phi-Psi 21. With that, again, may I request everyone now to kindly open your camera for a quick photo op. At the count of 10, all of your faces must be visible in the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay? Technical team, please do the honor.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Okay, so we have 6 panels in our room. So first panel, so as per instructions, smile lang. Okay, so ready, 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, so next, so 1, 2, 3, and smile. Keep smiling lang, guys. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, the next panel. So 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, so thanks, guys.
Okay, we only have one topic left, and that's again 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and God bless. Congratulations.
I have typed my email in case you have more questions.
Okay, so the email address of Dr. Ivy Corazon Mangaya-ay is ivycorazonangkog@gmail.com. We will also be providing it to you together with the PDF copy of Dr. Ivy's presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Welcome.
So much po, sir and Doc.
Salamat din po.
You're welcome.
Kaya hindi po mabubuksan yung evaluation.